Welcome to the City of Louisville Remote Planning and Zoning Commission meeting over Zoom. Today is April 6th, 2021, and we have a quorum present virtually. I want to give everyone listening from home some instructions on how to speak if you desire to. If you are viewing on your computer or through the smartphone application, press the raise your hand button. If you have called into the meeting, press *9 to raise your hand to speak. Once your hand is raised, staff will bring this to my attention and we will let you speak after the item is read and the staff presentation is given. If you are having trouble using these features, please email planning@cityoflouisville.com or call 817-938-4409 for assistance from staff. The first item on the agenda for tonight is the approval of the minutes from the March 16th, 2021 meeting. Do I have any corrections or additions? And if not, may I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Karen.
Second.
Second by Aram. We will do the roll call vote. William?
Aye.
I vote aye. Alvin?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
And Aram?
Aye.
Motion passes. The next item is a public hearing on plats. This is a final plat of the Austin Ranch West Lot 1R-1 and 2R Block A on 21.577 acres out of the Thomas A. West Survey, abstract number 1344, zoned light industrial, located on the eastern side of Tittle Drive between Travis Street and Plano Parkway, and being a replat of Austin Ranch West Lots 1R and 2 Block A.
Yes, commissioners. Oh, go ahead, John.
Staff has reviewed this final plat and based on the found deficiencies recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission disapprove the plat and delegate this to staff the ability to accept and approve it once the deficiencies are corrected.
Do we have any questions for John? And if not, may I have a motion?
Move to disapprove, send back for corrections, and then bring back for signature.
Motion.
Mary Ellen, just real quick, this is a public hearing plat.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is. I'm sorry. Let me open the public hearing. I forgot. Thank you, Michelle.
Oops.
Yeah. Okay, the public hearing is open. Anyone wishing to come forward to speak, please do so at this time or alert the staff if you desire to speak remotely over the phone or on your computer.
Mary Ellen, I don't see, we do have a number of folks in attendance, but there are no hands raised to speak.
Okay. At this time, then I will go ahead and close the public hearing. And now I will entertain a motion for this item.
Move to disapprove, send back for corrections, and bring back for signature.
Motion is by Karen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by William. We'll do a roll call vote. William?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Alvin?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
And Aram?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right. The next item we have here is a public hearing again for a zoning and special use permits. This is a public hearing as a consideration of a zone change request from light industrial district to planned development mixed use district on approximately 35.77 acre tract of land out of the P.K. Wagner Survey, abstract number 1342, located at the northern terminus of Summit Avenue on the west side of Interstate 35E and the east side of McGee Lane, as requested by Randy Rivera McAdams on behalf of Murdad Moyadi, MM Frontera LLC, the property owner. This is case number 20-01-1PZ.
Yes, good evening, commissioners. So we have been working on this development with the applicant for quite a long time. So give me just a second here and I'll pull up and screen share so you can see this is the location of the subject property. You can see it's at the end of Summit Drive, and they will be continuing Summit and Moccasin through the property. So let me get down here to the exhibit so you can see what this development will look like. They are proposing development standards that would create 3 sub-districts. There's a townhome sub-district, an urban residential sub-district, and a commercial core sub-district. And each of those sub-districts kind of have their own rules and standards. They're also proposing their own street sections for this property. So here is the general concept plan. You can see that they're using townhomes along McGee, and then also on kind of the southwest portion of the property. There are significant constraints on the site, such as power lines that go through existing sewer lines, a 50-foot wide Atmos gas easement, and then they actually fairly late in the planning process did discover some groundwater contamination that they had to do some planning around for mitigation purposes. So you do see with these townhomes, they are all alley access. There are townhomes that front McGee, so there won't be any screening walls along McGee, but there will be townhomes that have their front doors facing towards McGee that are alley accessed. There are about 200 townhome units total. There are 759 apartment units. That includes apartments in the commercial core area. The commercial core does allow for other uses though. For example, the mixed use building that has 35,000 to 40,000 square foot of ground floor commercial with residential above could potentially be a hotel if market conditions change. Just currently, there's not that demand, but we're optimistic that that might change in future. So you can see here, they've outlined their various districts, the commercial core along 35, the townhome residential district, and the urban living district. They've also provided open space amenities. So they are using, as the Northern Gateway plan called for, this gas line easement as kind of an open space corridor with a trail in it. They are providing here, and I'll zoom in a little bit on some of this. They are providing an open space that's between the 2 commercial buildings that will be like a plaza with a water feature, a central water feature in it. And then they're also providing a larger open space that's sort of central to the townhomes. These are urban style townhomes, so they won't have any yards of their own. So there's a small dog park that will be private and a shared pool that will be private. But otherwise, all the open space, while privately owned and maintained, will be open to the public. So there will be a 12-foot trail that runs along the north side of the Moccasin Trail extension, and then the trail in the 50-foot gas easement. And so that'll provide connectivity to adjacent properties. And in total, we're talking about 3 acres approximately of publicly accessible open space. Let me change, sorry about that view there, give me just a second. So here's kind of a detail of what that centralized open space would look like. The idea is a graded flex field for folks to play on, benches, picnic tables, and some enhanced landscaping. So a fairly simple but calm open space at the center of the development. There are 2 main streets on our thoroughfare plan that are being extended, Summit and Moccasin. Apart from that, all these other streets will be public. And the alleys will be public as well, minus the private drives around the commercial development and the urban apartments here in the urban core district. But all of the colored dash lines that you see, those will be public streets. And so this exhibit was just to kind of clarify what's public versus what's going to be private. They do plan to potentially put in some screening walls, mostly to the south and to the north where there's existing commercial developments. Within the development itself, there will not be screening walls, and along McGee and the highway, there will not be screening walls. They've provided some lot details for the townhome lots, as they are denser lots than what we typically see. And they've provided alternative street sections. They really did want to get street trees in at a 30-foot on-center spacing. So looking at our code overhaul and some of the direction we're going with there, they propose these street sections that would be specific to their development. They have 1 street section for Moccasin and Summit, which does have 12-foot travel lanes, as that's required by the thoroughfare plan. The other streets, which are mostly through the townhomes, have 11-foot travel lanes. There is dedicated striped on-street parking. None of that parking is included in any of the off-street parking counts. That would all be available for overflow parking. Since some of the townhomes do front onto open space, they do have a 24-foot wide paved alley that's in a 30-foot alley easement, and that's to make sure that there is fire access to those townhomes that front towards open space areas. Other alleys are going to be a standard a 20-foot right-of-way with 15 foot of pavement. They provided us some conceptual elevations. So you can see this is the concept elevation for the townhomes. And then this is the elevations for the urban commercial. You can see there's about 60% actually is stone or brick with about 30% stucco. They do some metal panel accents just at the main corner. And one of the great things about the urban living areas, they're committing to 5,000 square foot of live workspace. And they've shown that space and they've dedicated it here with their elevations. What they've done there is they've used more stone in that area. And they've also provided more windows and windows around the doors to kind of create more of a commercial look where those live work units could be. So you can see those that are right here, and then it transitions to more of your just standard residential outside of that area. So this is another just view of that. And then this is a very conceptual elevation of the urban core district. You can see this is all ground floor retail. They're showing on the concept plan 40,000 square foot of ground floor retail. They've committed to a minimum of 35,000 square foot ground floor retail. So you can see there's some retail on the ground floor with residential above. Building 1 has a parking garage wrap in the middle. Building 2 is surface parked, and there's parking underneath the building, like podium parking. And there is commercial space fronting I-35 and also fronting into that plaza that does have the water feature in it. And here's just kind of a rendering of what that might look like. So the applicant is proposing the mixed-use based zoning district for this development. Staff has reviewed it and worked on the development standards with the applicant. They are also asking for 8 alternative standards. And the overlay board will be meeting this evening as well to consider those 8 alternative standards. And I can go over those, but I'll first pause to ask if you guys have any questions on the concept plan or zoning. Nope, okay. So going through just the alternative standards, just so that I'm touching base on that for you all. The first one is to allow the varied setbacks. So they're actually proposing a 12.5 foot setback for the residential streets and a 14.5 foot setback on Moccasin and Summit. And those setbacks actually do include the sidewalk and the landscaped amenity area with the street trees. And so that does get you very close to the required 0 to 10 foot build to zone that would be required on a primary pedestrian street within the I-35 overlay. For the commercial and multifamily buildings, though, they are requesting that be a build to zone of 14.5 feet to 35 feet, and that they have a build out frontage of 70% in lieu of 80%. And so that is a little bit of a difference, but that is it can be recommended for approval by the overlay board to the city council. They are bringing the buildings to the street and putting the parking to the rear with the exception of a row of parking along I-35, which is permitted. They are requesting to reduce the landscape buffer along I-35 feet to 15 feet in lieu of the required 20 feet. And that can be recommended for approval to the city council by the overlay board. They're requesting that if they do get a hotel user in, that they allow that hotel to park at 1 space per 2 rooms plus 1 space per 200 square feet of commercial area in lieu of 1 space per 300 square feet. That's in line with what the general code allows outside of the I-35 overlay area and more representative of the demands of a hotel. So staff didn't have any objections. We would make that a recommendation to council since the percent deviation is unknown without knowing the number of rooms and square footage and so forth. To allow an increase in the maximum block length to 1,000 feet in lieu of the required 600 foot maximum, and to allow maximum block perimeter of 3,000 feet in lieu of the required 1,600 feet maximum. So the largest block lengths and perimeters are around the urban living district. They do have a pass-through between the two buildings that could be used by pedestrians and vehicular traffic. It's just not a public street. In addition, the southern row of townhomes does back up to existing commercial and is fairly constrained on what it can do in terms of its block length. This can be recommended by the overlay board to the city council. They're also asking for a reduction in the percent stone or brick to 60 to 70%, depending on which sub-district we're in, with the requirement that stucco be used for the remaining 30 or 35%. And that's in lieu of doing 80% stone or brick with really open options for the remaining 20%. So they're reducing the stone or brick, but committing to a cement-based stucco for the remainder. And so that's what can be recommended by the city or recommended to the city council. What the overlay board can approve is the alternative street sections. Those do reduce the streetscape zone to 10 feet in lieu of 12 feet. We reduce the sidewalk width from 6 foot to 5 feet and the amenity zone width from 6 foot to 5 feet. A lot of this was just based on having to redesign the site after they found some groundwater contamination. They had to realign the streets to go north-south instead of east-west. And between the Moccasin Road and the easement, there was just limited space to do that. Then they're asking for a reduction in the landscape area between the parking lot and the street to 4 feet in lieu of the required 5 feet. So this would only apply where we have a little bit of that parking that's along I-35, but also adjacent to Moccasin Lane where that's going to extend through. And then to allow a parking ratio of, it's basically 1.445 parking spaces per unit in the urban living sub-district in lieu of the 1.5 spaces per unit. And just a correction on this, they're actually requesting that also for the commercial core sub-district. And this is based on meeting their needs at other locations in 1 space per bedroom. So if they do 1 space per bedroom, since they have primarily 1 bedroom units, they will have more than that. And it's fairly in line with what we've done in some other areas in terms of the percentage 1 bedroom unit count, which isn't finalized yet as they're continuing to do their market research. But they feel that the 1.445 parking spaces is fairly close. This action can be approved by the overlay board as it's only if you look at the numbers reduction, it's only a 3.6% reduction. So staff's here if you have any question. The applicant is here as well, and I believe they have a presentation for you as well. So Ashton Miller with GNA has that, and I'm going to promote him to a panelist so he can give his presentation, if that's all right, Mary Ellen.
Sure.
Okay, am I on? There we go.
You are there, Ashton.
Okay, hello everybody. Let me share my. All right, thank you, commissioners. I'll go ahead and get started here. My name is Ashton Miller. I'm with McAdams, located 111 Hillside Drive, Louisville, Texas, 75057. I just want to say on behalf of McAdams, we're excited to help Centurion American bring this vibrant and a true mixed-use project to the Northern Gateway there into the city of Louisville. So just to kind of go over an overview of the project, the first thing is people are seeing as they drive in across Lake Louisville bridge on 35 is going to be this property. So we really thought that it was an opportunity to do something special, as this is the first thing that people are seeing really as they get into the city of Louisville. And as you all know, this property is within the I-35 overlay. So we wanted to incorporate all of those principle designs that are embodied in that document, such as like walkability, making it pedestrian oriented, and a mixture of living types and uses as well, to attract as many different types of people that Louisville has. So on the screen before you, you can kind of see what's surrounding the area. 407 and 35 is a big intersection for the city of Louisville. You've also got the train station, the DCTA train station, QT McDonald's, and then, all of the other businesses that are around there. It's a very vibrant area for the city of Louisville already as far as commercial development goes. Then this is just kind of another overview of the site, kind of see more zoomed in of where we're looking at for the property. You can see there we've got on the left image, you can see there's the new single family neighborhood with the trail that runs through that neighborhood, kind of just setting us up to extend that trail. Then on the right side, you see that image of the topography of the site. So just to get more into specifics here, we did break down the development standards into 3 core districts: the urban living district being all urban living multifamily units, the townhome district, and then the commercial core, putting all of that commercial area so it's easy for people coming off of 35 into the development. And then here is just another image of the concept plan. So you can see here we have the Atmos easement running kind of central directly through the site. So that is where we decided to locate the majority of the open space, as we can't put any buildings there. So we've also got the Atmos easement that's running north-south across our property. So we wanted to use those 2 things as the dividing areas of open space and work around those areas. So one thing, as Michelle spoke to, is streets or something that we really wanted to spend a lot of time with for this development. And we really took at McAdams, we are the main developers and engineers and designers of the Riverwalk in Flower Mound. So we wanted to do something a little bit more urban on this site. And we thought it would be a nice thing to take away from how we design the streets in the Riverwalk, with trees every 30 feet. You've got larger sidewalks with the townhomes and all of the businesses located right off of those streets. So we do have 2 different types of streets. Our bigger streets are the Summit and Moccasin. Those are your type A streets, the 41-foot right of way. And then we've got your type B street, which is the smaller ones, with more townhomes located off with a 39-foot right of way. So then to go into specifics of each district, we do have the urban living district, which are 4-story multifamily wrap buildings. We're going to have a parking structure or in that district. And another thing to take note of, and Michelle also mentioned this, is the live work. We're designating a minimum of 5,000 square feet of live work units right at the corner of Moccasin and Summit. So it'll be highly visible for anybody that is traveling through the site and walking through the site. The next district is the Townhome District. This is where the majority of the open space is located in the site, is in the Townhome District. Again, playing off of the Atmos easement, that's where all of our central open space is. And there are a total of 201 townhome units within this district. And then just to kind of zoom in a little bit to that central open space area, we're designating just a little bit under 3 acres of flex field public open space. We really envision this as something that the residents and anybody that's walking through the site, they can make it their own. They can use it how they see fit. We've got picnic tables, we have benches going through. So they can really, that's why we designate flex field public open space. Anybody can make it their own. And then as you see, we've got a small area designated for the resident pool that'll just be for the townhome residents within the townhome district. And then lastly, we have the commercial core district. One thing we're really excited about is the possibilities that go along with the pond and the public plaza that's in between the 2 urban living and commercial buildings. So we've got a minimum of 40,000 square feet. I'm sorry, we're proposing 40,000 square feet of commercial space in this district alone. And then you'll have the multifamily units on top. So again, this is another picture of the public plaza area. You see restaurants and picnic tables and playgrounds and the possibility of a stage being on an island. So we're really excited about this public plaza area. We think it's a great addition to, attract the residents that live in this area, but it also being a destination place for those that live in the city of Louisville. And I think this would be definitely a destination area and something that people are excited to go to. And that's the end of my presentation. Again, I am honored to present to the commissioners, and I've also got Randy Rivera here in the room with me, and we have Derek Goodman with Centurion America, and we can answer any questions that you guys may have. Thank you all.
No, I've got a few questions.
Okay.
This might answer a couple. A couple of these might answer our citizens' questions in the chat. Can you explain why there's, I guess, why a fence? Maybe there were some site restrictions, and maybe why there's not a fence along McGee Lane.
Yeah, so they actually have townhomes in the plan that front on McGee Lane. So their front doors will open to McGee. So there'll be a sidewalk along McGee, and those homes, they'll have the garage in the rear off the alley, but those homes will actually face towards McGee Lane.
Okay, I guess, was that a conscious decision, I guess, to do that, or was that, is there a reason why there typically you might see a fence going
Yeah,
along
so
McGee?
yeah, and that's typical in a more suburban style development to back the homes up to streets and then put in a fence. So this was a decision based on doing a more urban style project where you would have homes fronting streets. As long as they're alley entry, there's no traffic concerns because there's not cars coming in backing out onto McGee or anything like that. They'll have to go to the other streets to, turn out onto McGee.
Okay. This is another one that might answer one of the citizens' questions. What is on the south end of the property, what is the odor abatement easement related to?
Yes, and that is, they're dedicating an odor abatement easement for our public works group. That was something they requested at the start of this project. They recognize there are some sewer odor issues, and that was the most ideal location for an odor abatement station. And I'm not an expert in how those stations work, but they requested a certain amount of space to be able to put in equipment to help reduce the odor. And the applicant is dedicating that via an easement.
Yeah, I think that's going to solve the problem. I've noticed that smell as well, living near here. Also, what happens with the storm line on the south end of the property that kind of goes across the street, the culvert, I guess, for lack of a better term? How does that get tied in somehow with, I guess, hard utilities?
Yes. Yes, so that will be incorporated into their drainage system within their street network.
Okay. Also, I noticed there was, I think, 64 units that are rental. Is that the townhomes?
Correct.
That are not for purchase. What's the reasoning behind those being rental versus the other ones being purchased?
Yeah, that has to do with the groundwater contamination. There was apparently one of what it looks like is on an adjacent property, there was a dry cleaning shop and some chemicals got into some of the groundwater. And so based on that reasons, they had to kind of redesign the townhome layout to minimize the number that would have to be rentals due to that.
And is there any, I know it's not required, but is there any opportunity that maybe some of those rentals could be more affordable housing type rentals? Is there any consideration from the owner on that?
Yeah, that's something that we hadn't talked about very much, but I can ask Derek, who's here, if he would like to speak to that question. Derek?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. let me make sure I understand, Michelle, before I go on and answer that question. Are we allowed to sell those if we would like, the way this is being presented? Okay,
Yes,
that's
you
what I
are.
thought. I just want to make sure. We haven't really, we just want to have the flexibility, given the constraints of the groundwater, which I'm candidly learning a whole lot more about the further we get into this, but we just want to have the flexibility. And if we can sell, if they, in fact, we, get an MSD and so forth, and we can sell the product, we may very well do that as opposed to leasing it. But we just don't want to, we want to have the flexibility because of the problem that it, that's created by the contaminated groundwater.
So it's just, so you are looking at an MSD for the site?
Yes, sir. We
Okay.
sure are. In fact, I spoke to an environmental attorney today. And
I'm actually a little familiar with MSD. I'm going through that right now on a project I'm doing in my work life. So I understand. Yeah, I understand the situation. So it's obviously they'll have pipe utilities and all that, everything. So it's kind of my first rodeo too on the MSD, but it's interesting that see another one.
Yeah, it seems like the more time goes by, the more I learn about it. But we're just trying to do it right, and therefore talking to a really good environmental attorney who I had the first call with her today, and she was very, very impressed with her. And so we plan to, get that done right, and so there are no issues down the road.
So if you do the rental, how would that work?
Well, we would delineate the plan anyway was, we kind of had, everything was moving fast. We had to make some decisions about whether or not to close on this land. And so the plan was originally to delineate the, can you see it, or I just, I had my camera covered up. I didn't know if you even could see me or not, but the plan was to go along the boundary of the, I'll call it a contaminated zone, if you will. And inside that boundary with a little buffer, those would be rentals. And then on the other side would be for sale units. But we have the more I learn about this with the MSD and things, there are things we can do that we think we might be able to sell them after all. And so that is what we're looking into right now. We're in discussions with a very good builder and just pursuing that as an option as well.
Okay, and I assume there's not any monitored wells on the site.
We the only wells on the site are the ones that Randy could speak to this, because I get in trouble quick when it gets into engineering, as she could probably tell you, so could Michelle. But the wells, we drilled some wells, the environmental consultants did, to try to identify the boundary of the contaminated water, if you will.
Okay, it's no big deal.
While
right,
William's thinking, he's asked most of the questions I had, but I also want to confirm, and whoever wants to can jump in, Summit Avenue will be connected and they will be able to come out at that traffic light.
Yes.
Yeah.
But William asked all my other questions.
Are there any more questions or comments?
Such a question as much as a little bit concern when we go back to thinking like an example was brought up of the Riverwalk and Flower Mound and how long that took to get all the commercial and the amenities that were promised or whatnot. And, we're starting to see a little bit of a groundwork there. So I'm kind of having visions of the same thing happening here, where we're just going to have a bunch of dense townhomes and nothing else, and not that community feature and not the amenities are going to bring people. And I don't know, like, I'm putting my realtor hat on, and it is concerning.
Yeah, so I'll speak to that a little bit. So it probably will be a phased development. The residential component, given the market, probably will come in first. The trail along the Moccasin extension and along Summit will have to come in with the townhomes, because that's part of that, or at least where the townhomes are fronting those streets, the trail will come in there. The open space with the pool amenity would also come in with the townhomes, as it's going to serve those townhomes. So it's really that second open space, that's the plaza and the commercial buildings, that would probably be at a later date based on the market phasing.
So have you, I guess, tagging on to Aaron's, have you thought about how to, I guess, market this maybe differently than the Flower Mound project?
I do think that this project benefits from the frontage on I-35, which should be very helpful. But I'll go ahead and, Derek, I'm going to promote you to a panelist so that folks can see you as you answer that question.
Okay, there's Randy. So I'm sorry, what was the question?
It was more of a concern, I guess, just drawing parallels to the Riverwalk project, where the amenities and the commercial and, the lack of restaurants, the lack of anything happening for so many years, where it was just, the townhomes and the garden homes, and that's it. So just a concern that I do have about a project of this scale.
Well, I think he's on the call, but we are currently under contract with a major multifamily developer who is already doing plans and everything for their site, for the largest of the multifamily sites. And as far as the amenity center, it helps us to sell homes, which helps us sell lots, to have that amenity center sooner rather than later, if you will. And so, sorry, I don't know, I can't see her yet. So I don't know if that helps answer the question, or.
I agree. It helps sell it, but I'm just thinking back to, how it was sold over there too. That was used to sell the residential there, and then it was almost like a ground stop, and it just didn't come. And now it is coming, but I'm, just a concern that is lingering in my mind is with the same thing.
I could, sorry, there's echo. I think I could,
Yeah.
I think I can speak to that, Commissioner Ollie. Hi, I'm Randy Rivera, land planner with McAdams, with Ashton, and I'm working for Derek on this project for all these years. So it's exciting to finally be in front of you tonight. This is quite a bit different than Riverwalk in terms of phasing and timing and geographical location. And the reason the restaurants were held up for so long was there were a lot of reasons. The biggest one being the floodplain changes were being held up by FEMA for a year or more. And that postponed the delivery of the restaurants. And we are excited that Primo's and Buena Brazos are coming to Flower Mound finally. But I think with Frontera, we don't have to deal with FEMA. We don't have any of those issues on it. And the fact that it's a true mixed use, vertical mixed use building in the commercial core up against 35 will encourage this to be built a lot quicker, because if Centurion's wanting those 265 units in that commercial core building, that's the 4-story building with a plaza, they're going to have to construct that building or sell it to a multifamily developer to construct it, and it will have the ground floor in it at that time. Then the challenge at that point would be leasing out those spaces to getting them activated. And part of putting those buildings in would include the plaza, and the attractiveness of that, the plaza and the water feature will encourage folks to come in there and take up those spaces for restaurants. I know a lot of us know that this area is so void of seating, full service restaurants and seating areas and that type of retail service. I know there's a lot of folks that have to walk across 35 along 407 in order to get to a grocery store, or things of those types of retail services. So I think it's all that contributes to the fact that this is going to happen sooner. It's not going to be under the same time frame as Riverwalk. That was challenging, being in the middle of the middle of Flower Mound between two farm to market roads. They were heavily trafficked, but it's not anywhere near the hundreds of thousands of cars a day on 35E.
What type of restaurants are you envisioning for Frontera?
For Frontera, the ground floor is slated to be commercial, retail, restaurant, a combination. We haven't allocated typical square footages for how much is going to be designated restaurant or retail or office or anything like that. But we don't know the types of restaurants or names or anything, but they would be full service restaurants, ones that have the outdoor seating that's huge. I know all of us have kind of experienced that, especially this past year. But it will have those types of restaurants take advantage of the water feature and having activities and things like that around that.
So are we thinking like something like Legacy West type, like different price points, or I'm just trying to like envision like what type, like what price points we're talking, what chain restaurants, like a Cheesecake Factory, P.F. Chang's type, or smaller than that?
Derek, if you want to answer that, you're more than welcome to.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm not sure how this works too well. So one thing that's very noteworthy, I guess I should say, or mentionable, is that the owner, Murdad Moyetti, is also, he's in the home building business. He's the largest single family lot developer in the state of Texas. And he's also in the restaurant business. So he's, in fact, there's a restaurant he's going to do in downtown Louisville. The restaurant, the food and beverage company is not, I'm only, tertiary involvement with them whenever they might be doing something in a project that I'm, it's one of the assets within my portfolio, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if he decided to put some of his restaurants in there. He's got an Italian restaurant, Latin restaurant. He's got, and knowing him, he likes to go big. He doesn't mess around, as Randy can tell you. And he's a visionary guy. He makes things work that nobody else. I know, because I used to be a developer. We had a home building company, and then we sold that, started doing land development, and we would, all the developers a lot of them know one another, and we would, ourselves, Taylor Duncan, I can just start rattling off some developers, and we would all try to buy a deal and make it work, and we would say, it's just too thin, we can't, I'll pass. And then, 6 months later, Murdad buys it and builds a great development, and we were all scratching our heads like, I still don't know how he did that. But I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him, do some of his own restaurants in there. I don't want to commit to that, but right there on that water feature, on that location, I can definitely see that potentially happening. But to really address specifically your question that you answered, I do not see it being, the kind of, I just went to Legacy West with my daughter. She lives with me. She's my niece, but basically she's my daughter. And we went to Legacy West. I've been there several times, live not too far from there. And I don't see the prices being that high. At least we hope. We want it to be, that nice like that, but not as, you have to really want to go there to have, eat Italian food or something. We went there and just the two of us, and it was $100 lunch on Sunday. And, we're not going to try to do that. We want to make it where people can afford to go there, but yet our vision is for it to be nice, as you can see by those drawings and renderings of the plaza area.
Thank you.
I think the concern is tagging on to Aram's is that I think you've got a great outdoor area, and I think the concern is always is what level of scrutiny does the businesses and restaurants that go in there get looked at to maintain the vitality of the project. I look at some of the also at a development of Highland Village, although they don't have townhomes, their choices, and I know sometimes you can't really pick and choose who you bring in there, but their choices of restaurants and stuff in that development, to me, are not what I would do to bring in people to the development. I think to this day, it's still hurting that development. So to me, I think that's what Aram's talking about.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, it's a fine line. And, I think that Merdad being in the restaurant business, and some, nice restaurants that they're nice, but they're not where the average person can't afford to go eat there. But it's a fine line. Like, I lived in Victory Park at the W Hotel. I was one of the first homeowners there, or condo owners there. And I got to look at a big, long, empty street with no retail, just a bunch of empty spaces there for a long time when the economy turned down a little bit. And, if you get too high, if you get too, and even in the AT&T Plaza at the arena, same thing. There was a Nine Steakhouse, which was a wonderful restaurant. It was gone. There was a really nice Italian, gone. Nice Chinese restaurant, gone. They were, all the things that at one point I could walk to, they're just gone because they were so high priced that nobody coming to the basketball games could afford to eat there. And so, anyway, it's a fine line, but I've seen, I've eaten Merdad's food from his restaurants. Very good food. One of them is, I don't know if I can even pronounce it, but it's Sfreco, Sfreco. And, they're just, he's got his hand in a little bit of everything, but he's got a guy who's running his food and beverage operation that's a very seasoned guy and knows what he's doing. And again, I don't know that he will be definitely doing his own restaurants in there, but I would not at all be surprised. And if he doesn't, then, candidly, it would be whoever built the multifamily would be kind of in charge of that.
And I would like to add to that the development standards speak to the establishment of an owners association, a property owners association, a homeowners association. And so the open space areas that we showed on the exhibits and everything will be maintained by those association or sub-associations of the larger Frontera POA. And so those common areas will be will be maintained by an association that's made up of the separate owners and businesses in Frontera.
Okay, commissioners, before I open the public hearing, is there anything else for the applicant? Okay, at this time, I'm going ahead and open the public hearing. Again, the instructions at the beginning were to either, if you're on the phone, press *9 to speak, or the raise your hand button on your computer. And then when you are acknowledged, if you would please state your name and address so that staff has that for the record. Thank you. Michelle, you're muted.
Thank you for that. I have Mr. Ryan Herman. I'm going to promote you to a panelist for you to speak and ask your questions.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Excellent. My name is Ryan Herman. I'm at 2015 Sorrento Lane in Louisville. It's just right at the corner of Moccasin and McGee. Do you guys expect any change to traffic patterns on McGee Lane? Any installation of stop signs or stoplights?
Randy?
There are no plans right now, Randy, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are no plans to add any stop signs or stoplights to McGee. It doesn't look like the traffic counts will warrant anything like that.
That is correct.
Okay. What are the height of the townhomes that we can be expecting that are backing up to McGee Lane?
The maximum height would be 3 stories or 35 feet, and I believe 3 stories is anticipated.
Okay, and there's going to be no privacy type screening or fencing installed up against McGee Lane. I heard one of the other folks ask that question. I just want to confirm that there's no landscaping plans up against McGee.
No, the homes against McGee would have a 15-foot front front yard setback, and then their front doors would face towards McGee.
Okay. Has anybody looked into any kind of market analysis in terms of impact to surrounding residential real estate and what we can expect from that?
Sorry, can you repeat that question? I was writing something down here.
Yeah. Have you guys done any market analysis to look at impact to surrounding residential real estate? Can we expect a near-term decrease in housing prices in the area, near-term increase, long-term increase? Given that you're introducing a large number of inventory townhomes, kind of just concerned for the property value of my particular parcel.
Sure. We have not done any, we haven't hired anyone to do that, if you will, but I was in the home building business and we built about 800 houses a year in Dallas, Fort Worth. And feel like I know, a little bit about property values and things like that. And although, yes, we're bringing what I believe is a needed residential product to the area, but we're also bringing the rest of the things that go along with it, the park, the open space, the retail, live, work. And I think when it's built and completed, my opinion, is that it will help the values of the nearby residents because it'll look good and it will offer walkability to the retail and restaurants, and you can sit out there on that little water feature and have lunch, dinner, or what have you. And I think those are things that people appreciate, that they can. There's not a lot of walkability in Dallas Fort Worth. I mean, really, compared to many other cities.
Sure. And just one last question. Have you guys looked at or analyzed the new apartment structures that have gone up on just a little ways down the road on 35E access road? Have you looked at, how leasable those units have been and how long it's taken them to, get residents? And, is there really a market for another apartment complex so close to a lot of these large density housing units that have gone up recently?
Mm-hmm. I have an answer to it, but we have our multifamily group who is going to build on the largest site. I think they're on here. Is Mike on here? Mike, are you on here? Or do we know if Mike's on here, Randy?
Mike is here.
Let's let him answer that because he very well may have done that study.
Yeah, I'm here. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Mike Lindo with Leon Capital, and we are we're doing the urban living apartment areas. But yeah, I mean, if some of the ones you're talking to that have started leasing up, the Nora is just down the road. They've been leasing up. They're still building the rest of their phases, but they're at a little over 30% occupancy right now, which was finished in 2020. So that was not obviously too far away. Tower Bay Lofts as well. They're around 35% leased up. There's a Cortland Lake Yard built in 2019, which was 84% leased up. And that was a project that, we did as well in this part of DFW, and it leased up quite successfully. But other than that, I mean, the existing competition in the area that we're looking at for some of our market analysis is all above, the lowest one that I'm seeing is 91%. The rest are hovering around 94 to 96%. So kind of in short answer, looking at some of the supply and demand and some of the growth in the market, we're confident this will lease up. We do see the demand for that in this area. But otherwise, to kind of answer your immediate question, yes, the ones that have been constructed recently are leasing up at a pretty good pace.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And in the question and answer, there had been another question just regarding the construction timeline. And so I'll ask Randy and Derek that question.
The construction timeline, I believe, was your question. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. So once we get started, I don't see the actual, when you say, let me make sure I'm answering the right question. You mean for the development of the project, or do you mean the sale of all the townhomes? Or let me make sure I understand the question before I answer the wrong one.
Well, it's not my question. I'm reading it from the timeline. It's Mr. Herman's question, but I believe it's development of the project.
Yeah, so like from start of construction of the first townhome, right? Can we expect ongoing construction for the next 10 years, or do you expect full build out of at least the townhome section, inside of a year or 5 years once fully permitted?
I would think that based upon discussions we've had, that the townhomes would be, sold out inside of 2 years. 2 years, let's say 2 years would be my professional estimation.
What type of model do you guys have? Are you building the townhomes and then planning on selling them, or are you using sales to drive the actual building timeline?
No, they'll do both, I believe. And with townhomes, you're not building just one townhome at a time. You build them in little sections. And so, I need to, I don't want to guarantee you anything, in other words, before we have a contract with a townhome builder, which I think we'll have imminently. But I think you'll see some of both. You'll see they'll probably say, here's a section we're going to build next. And then I don't think they'll wait to get every one of them sold in that little section before they build them. I think they'll build some sections as what we call in the industry spec homes, meaning speculative.
Sure, I understand that. I guess kind of a lot of my questions are kind of wrapped around, if I wanted to sell my home in the next 10 years, am I selling in the midst of a massive construction project, meaning the value of my home is going to be less, generally speaking, when you're looking at just townhome type development, keeping the commercial and area that's kind of like, that would potentially increase home value, right? But if we're looking at living in a construction zone for the next 10 years backing up to McGee, that would be something that I think local residents would generally be opposed to.
Yeah, sure. No, I don't think that would be the case at all. I mean, this is a 35-acre site, and in the scheme of things, we're talking about 200 townhomes. There's another asset that I'm running, and there's over 2,000 lots in it, and that kind of deal, that could be a lot longer. But this, relatively speaking, is not and much of that 35 acres is multifamily and/or retail. So, in the lake, and there are things at the roads and things. So it's not in the scheme of things, not a huge project for timeline wise.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I would say that I may be answering a question you didn't ask, but I want to say this was part of the question that your home is, as I understand it anyway, is single family detached, and of course these would be attached, and so it's a little bit apples and oranges. I mean, yes, they are residential for sale, but it's really kind of a little bit of a different product.
And I would like to add to that, Mr. Herman, that the roads that you saw on the plan, the public roads will be built with all the infrastructure will be built in a single phase. Will take about 10 months or so, 10 to 12 months. And that could overlap with the construction of the multifamily, the urban living district. And that could take about 18 months. And there could be some overlap there. And then once the infrastructure is in, then you'll start seeing the townhomes pop up. So yeah, when Derek was saying 2 years, that's a realistic kind of time frame.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Michelle, do we have anyone else wishing to speak?
Let's see. I do not see any other hands raised.
Did we get any cards or letters from anyone?
Yes, we did receive 2 emails, and staff did forward those out prior to the meeting. We did receive one that was concerned and was concerned about the density in terms of townhomes and rental communities, and would prefer to see a single family residential development. And then we had one that was more of an inquiry, really just wanting to see what was going to happen. And those were emailed out just prior to the meeting. So if you'd like to read those, you should be able to see those in your email boxes.
Actually, the second one was from Mr. Herman, who asked the questions earlier. To address the first email, like Michelle said, there was concerns about the proposed use. I do want to give a little bit of background about the current zoning. The current zoning is light industrial, which is a very broad district, but primarily that does allow for large distribution warehouses and manufacturing. And it usually is accompanied by very heavy 18-wheeler or truck traffic. In fact, about a year ago, a very large distribution warehouse was proposed for this site, a 300,000 square foot building on the west side, closer to McGee Lane. I believe it had 38 truck docks. There was also another 100,000 square foot warehouse along I-35. That project did fall through, and that is when this developer, after that project fell through, this developer came forward. Extensive planning has been done in this overall area. As Michelle mentioned earlier, this is part of the Northern Gateway. We have a Northern Gateway plan adopted by the City Council in 2015. As part of that plan, there was an extensive analysis to the land use and the impacts on surrounding areas. And it was, the council determined that it was in the best interest of the city that this be developed as more of an urban village, a walkable urban village to really protect the surrounding neighborhoods. I felt that the industrial development in this area would have a very negative impact on surrounding areas. So that's just kind of a little bit of a nutshell history lesson on kind of the development history of this part of Louisville. Also, I do want to also mention too that there's 25 acres on the south side of 407, which is also part of the village or part of the Northern Gateway. And that's expected, the city is working with various developers for that to be fairly pretty much commercial uses. So all of the residential that's going in will support commercial uses at that site. And again, bringing the entire Northern Gateway, which also includes the newer stuff that's being built along Summit to the south. It's all envisioned as one large urban village. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
What
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I was going to say what Richard said really is all. I should have added that into what Mr. Herman was asking about because it's really very directly related. If it were light industrial, the values of his house would be much more suspect than most definitely compared to what the nice deal that we're planning to do.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing at this time, and they could still have discussion among commissioners if there is any more discussion or questions for staff or the applicant.
First of all, I want to applaud what all you've gone through on this project. This is a very complicated site with the gas easement that just got put in, the overhead power lines, odor abatement, the potential MSD. I've gone through some of these on some of the stuff I do in my personal life, and I know how difficult it is. So, and considering the fact that what Richard said, this could have been a light industrial warehouse, I would not have wanted that. I think this project is definitely what the Northern Gateway needs. It's something that's going to attract, people to this area. And I think assuming this gets approved, I hope you take to heart some of the comments about picking the selection of the, like Aaron said, the retail and the restaurants, because I think ultimately that will make your development even more successful if you can do that. So just some comments.
Yeah, I really, he hasn't specifically said this, but we've had conversations that lead me to believe that that's kind of what he's thinking. Is when I say he, Mr. Moyetti. And I know if he does his restaurants there, it'll be a nice deal. And if not, I think by the way the development's laid out and planned out, I think it most definitely lends itself to a nice yet not hyper priced restaurants for the location.
Okay, commissioners, are there any more comments or questions? And if not, I would like to entertain a motion, please.
I would approve. Thank you for listening to us. We appreciate it.
I'm sorry, was that you, William?
Yes.
What was your motion? Move to approve? Okay, motion by William. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Alvin. We're going to do a roll call vote. William?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Alvin?
Aye.
Karen? You're on mute, Karen.
Sorry, aye.
And Aram? Pardon me?
Aye.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Okay, the motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for your comments and assistance on this item. At this time, pardon me?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, just real quick. This will go to a second public hearing and final decision at City Council on April 19th at 6 p.m.
Thank you, Michelle. Sorry, I started a little ahead of myself there. At this time, we're going to go ahead and recess the Planning and Zoning Commission and convene the Overlay District Board to consider the items that Michelle laid out earlier. And so at this time, I would like to go ahead and call to order the Overlay District Board. We do have a quorum present, and our first item of business is to consider the approval of the minutes from the February 2nd meeting. Do I have a motion, and are there any questions or additions?
I move to approve.
Motion by Aram.
Second.
Second by Karen. We'll have a roll call vote. William?
Aye.
I vote aye. Alvin?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
And Aram?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are approved. So the next item then is the consideration of the 8 alternative standards that related to the mixed-use development on approximately 35.77 acre tract of land out of the PK Wagoner survey, abstract number 1342, located at the northern terminus of Summit Avenue on the west side of Interstate 35E and the east side of McGee Lane, as requested by Randy Rivera McAdams on behalf of Merdad Moyadi, MM Frontera LLC, the property owner.
Good evening again, Overlay Board members. Let me pull this back up for you. Now we're in our role as the Overlay Board looking at the alternative standards that have been requested on this project. And so I'll just kind of go through those alternative standards one more time for you. To allow a setback of 12.5 feet on the townhome streets and 14.5 foot front setback on Moccasin Trail and Summit Avenue in lieu of the required 0 to 10 foot build to line. A 14.5 foot to 35 foot build to zone along Moccasin Trail for the commercial and multifamily buildings in lieu of the required 0 to 10 foot build to zone, and a build out frontage of 70% in lieu of the required 80% for the commercial and multifamily buildings. Again, based on the concept plan, the applicant is bringing the buildings to the street. And because the street section is not having the parkway and the sidewalk in the right of way, but rather that's in a private easement, it does actually have the buildings much closer to the street. It's more like they're 2.5 to 25 feet back from the street. To allow a reduction of the landscape buffer on I-35 to 15 feet in lieu of the required 20 feet. And that's to make sure they can fit that parking in to help that ground floor retail be successful. So there is a row of parking along I-35. To allow a hotel parking ratio of 1 space per 2 rooms plus 1 space per 200 square feet of commercial area in lieu of the required 1 space per 300 square feet. And that's just based on the needs of a hotel if the market is such that they can switch out one of those multifamily buildings for a hotel. To allow an increase in the maximum block length to 1,000 feet in lieu of the required 600 foot maximum, and allow an increase in the maximum block perimeter to 3,000 feet in lieu of the required 1,600 foot maximum. And again, that they are creating a fairly good block structure, especially with the townhomes. The one multifamily district is where the public street block lengths do get fairly long, but they do have a private drive that does cut through there. To allow a reduction to 60 and 70% stone or brick for certain buildings, provided that there's a 3/4 cement-based stucco is used for the remaining 30 or 35% in lieu of doing 80% stone or brick with 20% remainder materials. And those elevations would be in line with the conceptual elevations that were presented tonight. And those first 5 standards may be recommended by the overlay board to the city council. The next 3 alternative standards may be approved by the overlay board, and those are to allow alternative street sections by allowing a reduction in the streetscape zone to 10 feet in lieu of the required 12 feet, by allowing a sidewalk width of 5 feet in lieu of the required 6 feet, and to allow an amenity zone width of 5 feet in lieu of the required 6 feet, and to allow a travel lane width of 12 feet in lieu of the maximum 11 feet, and to allow the amenity zone to be on a private lot with landscaping, irrigation, and pedestrian easements in lieu of being public right-of-way. To allow a reduction in the landscape area between the parking lot and streets to 4 feet in lieu of the required 5 feet. And there's just a few areas where that would come into play, mostly closer to I-35. And then to allow a parking ratio of 1.45 parking spaces per unit for the urban living subdistrict and also the commercial core subdistrict in lieu of the required 1.5 spaces per unit. And that's based on the percent of single bedroom units. So staff is here if you have any questions, and the applicant is still here as well.
Okay, commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant or staff at this time on these items? Okay, then I'll go ahead and ask for a motion. This is a little bit of a two-parter motion. So if I could have a motion on the first items to recommend approval for the city council, and the last item is recommend approval for the overlay district board.
Make a motion to approve alternative standards A through E as a recommendation to city council and approve items F through H as approved by the overlay board.
Thank you. Motion by William. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Aram. And we'll have a roll call vote. William?
Aye.
I vote aye. Alvin?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Aram?
Aye.
Motion passes. The next item on the agenda here is to adjourn the overlay district board. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Move to adjourn overlay.
Motion by Karen,
Second.
second by Alvin. William? Vote William?
Aye, sorry.
I vote aye. Alvin?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Aram?
Aye.
And we are adjourned for the overlay district board. And at this time, we will reconvene the Planning and Zoning Commission and announce that we have a quorum still present. The public hearing that we have to consider next is the, and we're making a recommendation to the council for the Louisville 2025 Vision Plan Update.
Good evening, commissioners. As you may recall, the original 2025 vision plan was adopted in 2014. It was really groundbreaking for the city of Louisville. It had an extensive amount of public involvement. And I think the really groundbreaking aspect of that plan was the implementation. Our city manager made sure that all departments were involved in the implementation of that plan. And we have been extremely successful and have really transformed Louisville in many aspects. The update, since it's been about 6 years now, since it was originally adopted, that update began in the fall of 2019 and with an even more extensive public involvement process. Really, even more different aspects of the community were engaged. There was, like I said, a massive amount of outreach, and even going into the pandemic, a lot of that outreach went virtual. And like I said, we had, I think, 10 times more involvement and input from the community. most successful plans have really two successful ingredients, and that is usually the level of public involvement and number two, the level of implementation. So we have done very, very well in both those aspects. With that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Karen Walls, who has been working side by side with us on both the original 2025 plan and the update, and she will give you an overview of the new update document. Karen?
Great. Thank you very much, Richard. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, great. Yes. It's really nice to be back with you again this evening. I'm going to share my screen and use a PowerPoint to go through some of the recommendations. You did receive in your packet the draft of the complete document, and we're really excited that we're at this point for this update. So let me see if I can share my screen here, and we will get started on the PowerPoint. Okay, can you all see that? Let me make sure I can see you.
Yes, it looks good, Karen.
Okay, great. Okay, so let me go through the presentation. We last had a workshop on the 2025 update back in December, and some of these slides at the beginning of the presentation will be familiar from that time, but I just want to include them to remind you, and also for the benefit of anybody who might be watching tonight's presentation who might not have seen the earlier version of that. And so to do that, first of all, I want to just remind you of our process that we went through to do the update. As Richard said, we began working on the update of this plan in 2019, and this is the phasing of the process. You'll recognize that from past efforts. We are now at the bottom of that, at the adoption phase, the last phase of the project. And as you know, this has been a project with a great deal of public outreach. During the fall and winter of 2019, we had all kinds of different choices for people to be involved. As Richard noted, there was a big effort by the city staff to reach out to parts of the Louisville community who didn't always get involved in planning and in city issues. So there was a great deal of new kinds of input involved. And as you can see here on the screen, the Marco's Big Move reached out to the kids of Louisville as well, who will be the adults at the point that we're looking forward to the future of the community. The big events that we held in January of 2020, the Touchpoint event at MCL Grand, again, gave people many different choices in how to be involved. We had a similar event on January 30th at Castle Hills Community Center. We are also making a special effort to make sure that the folks in Castle Hills are involved in this process, and that as they look to annexation by the city and into the community, that their ideas and interests are included as well. So it was an extremely intensive effort and very diverse kinds of input, very diverse participation. We expected that that would continue forward. And then, of course, we ran into COVID. So the input since then has been virtual. And so I'll just want to summarize both from the time when we were still doing the in-person sessions, as well as overall now, that in general, we have received good support for continuing the direction that was set out in the Louisville 2025, continued action to achieve the vision. There have been a lot of suggestions of things to do based on what's happened, what we've learned, what those successes have been since 2014. And so many of those are reflected now in the update. During last year, while things were going in a virtual manner, we had 2 council workshops, one in July, one in October. We had a series of meetings to get input from boards and commissions, including y'all, back in December. And the city staff and I have continued to be working very intensely on taking all of those ideas into account and then drafting the actual document and putting the materials and the details together that you see this evening. We shared the drafts of these with the City Council at their retreat last month, and we received good support from them and good direction to continue forward. There are a few of the specific action priorities that have been modified a little to reflect the direction we received from Council. On the whole, they have been very supportive. And lastly, there there was online community input at the end of last month. After the winter storm, along with everything else that we've all been dealing with. And again, we've gotten good response from that. And I'll mention that in just a moment here on this next slide. What we'd like to do this evening, I will summarize the updates about the vision plan, the vision statement, the big moves and strategic moves. You see a bullet here that talks about recommendations in an addendum. We put that on the list for this evening because we were still evaluating the input from that online survey. And I can tell you now that of the people, we received about 124 participants in that survey. Of those, about 64% had not been involved in the 2025 efforts before, and yet when we asked about how consistent are these statements, the vision statement, the goals, and the objectives, how consistent are they with where you think Louisville should be going? For every one of those, it was over 80% of the respondents who said it was either very consistent or somewhat consistent with their own ideas. So based on that and based on reading all of the written comments that we received, I don't have any particular changes to recommend to you this evening, and therefore we don't have an addendum at this time. What we will be doing, if there are changes that you choose to make or in terms of your recommendations, we will create an addendum to share those as we go forward to other boards and commissions and then to the City Council. So what we'd like to do tonight, I will summarize the plan. You have a public hearing on the agenda, and then we hope to get your recommendations to City Council. This is the cover, as you see, and as I said, I believe that you all received the PDF of this document as part of your packet. We're really, really excited about the look and feel. We think it continues a lot of the flavor of the 2025 plan, but really updates it and brings in a lot of fresh graphics and a new look and a more diverse look. As you know, we have a vision statement. We have a set of big moves and strategic moves, each of which has a goal, which is the big statement of the outcome that you're trying to achieve. There's a set of objectives that are more detailed, and then there are specific action priorities that are intended to be things to accomplish in the short term. And so that's the format for each of the moves. We also have worked hard to make sure that there are connections between this plan and other priorities of the city. Throughout this document, you see action priorities with a little leaf symbol that shows priorities that relate to sustainability, that supplement the complete big move on sustainability. So we're referencing that cross connection between the sustainability big move and all of the other moves which also contribute to Louisville's sustainability. In addition, we have coordinated work on this plan with the library master plan and with the sustainability action plan. And so all of the direction is going to be consistent after this plan is adopted by council, should they approve the update. I believe the Parks Department will also be using it as the foundation for updates to the parks plans as well. So the city will have all of the plans moving in the same direction and those details carrying out the vision that's included in this document. The vision statement that you see here, I think, is unchanged from what we looked at in December. It's really an update of the previous plan with the same 4 major topics that you all created when you developed the 2025 plan originally. This is the list of big moves and strategic moves. We've changed some of those from the existing plan, as you know, and I'll mention them as we go through. In addition, the strategic moves are new in this plan because they reflect things that had previously been council priorities referenced in a separate document. So this is, again, coordinating and integrating all of those different kinds of policy direction for the city. The big moves map that you see here has been updated but still is the same geographic reflection of the moves that we had in the earlier plan. You will see the new gateways. You'll also notice, and up by the northern gateway here is a good example, this little kind of dotted pattern. This is an area near where you were just talking about that is part of the green centerpiece and also part of this gateway. So those two kind of integrate and work together to create the character of the kind of gateway that is. So we've tried to use some new graphic looks to communicate some of the integration of the plan. The first big move is green centerpiece, and on each one of these you can see the goal statement. In the cases where there is a geographic component, you can see that geography, and I'm going to just highlight a couple of the things that are the major updates from the existing 2025 plan. In this case, we're looking at revising the Green Centerpiece Master Strategy and Nature Center, given the experiences over the last several years with the partners, with the changes in the economy and the change in direction there, to make sure that it really is something that is going to benefit Louisville residents. There's also more emphasis on health and inclusion, in part based on the experience over the last year with COVID, and also just in general looking at these as ways to make sure that Louisville is a healthy community. On the slide here, this is, and many of these are the pages of the report itself. So I believe that you will recognize these, I hope. You can see the objectives for Green Centerpiece, and you can see the action priorities. And this is one example here where you see that green leaf that shows that this action priority here is also helping us to achieve our sustainability objectives. I'm going to go through these and go through them fairly quickly. If there are questions, I'll be happy to go back to any of them once I cover them at a high level at this point, unless you have questions now. On extending the green, again, you see the goal here. I think this goal is the same as we looked at in December. This update really builds on a lot of successful work that's happened since 2014, particularly about the 10-minute walk to a park, the inclusion and healthy lifestyles and focus on underserved areas is a reflection of the community input, as well as the mayor's Listen, Learn, Lead Commission recommendations from last summer. Again, you see a set of objectives related to extending the green, connecting to from the Green Centerpiece to all of the neighborhoods and all of the areas of the community. Old Town is a third move that is the same as in 2014. We're still, our goal is still to continue investment in Old Town. You see the graphic there that shows both the core and the larger area of the design district. The focus here, I think, is kind of an update on unique experience and destinations, creating something that people really love to go to, and not just strictly looking at market analysis, but looking at the experience of visiting Old Town and coming back to Old Town and its attractions, also increasing the connection from the main part of Old Town over to the DCTA station and over to I-35. The objectives that you see here speak to both of those things, the core character, as well as those larger connections throughout the entire Old Town area. And there's a number of action priorities that you see here that continue from the past plan, and also update with more partnerships, more activities on expansions of the things that have been successful over the last few years, and the experiences that y'all have learned with those efforts in Old Town. Diverse and thriving neighborhoods is a big move number 4. This is a combination of two of the big moves in the earlier plan, combining thriving neighborhoods and new neighborhood choices, because at this point we're really talking about largely developed communities and neighborhoods and wanting to keep them all really diverse, really successful. There is a lot more emphasis on housing, especially making sure there's a variety of housing choices and that there is affordable housing included here. There's also a number of action priorities that are geared to increasing community engagement in all parts of Louisville, in all of the different neighborhoods of the community. And that's a result of the input and the efforts of outreach at the beginning of this process. Here you see the objectives, and again, these are related to all the different neighborhoods within Louisville, and you'll notice E, including Castle Hills as well as an integral part of the Louisville community. There are a number of action priorities. The first on the list there is conducting a housing study to get a better current understanding of the supply and demand, what the dynamics are, what kinds of housing will best meet the needs that are identified in the community today. Secondly, completing the annexation of Castle Hills, and you can see many of these others are looking at making sure that the neighborhoods can have the services, the quality of life, and things in close proximity to home, as we've learned we need during this past year. Economic vitality is a change in the big move. The big move before was looking just at the employment centers, which you see on the map here. But now the goal and the title of economic vitality really speaks to an expansion to think about assisting Louisville's residents, supporting the businesses that are here, as well as enhancing those employment centers. So it's a broader look at the economy and a broader look at things like education, training, and small business assistance as part of what's going to make the city remain economically vital. These are the objectives, and you can see that reflected here. It's not only looking at the employment centers, but also activities like job training and workforce training, and having a mix of housing types so that the people who work in Louisville also can have some options to live here. This is the set of action priorities for the economic vitality, and you see a lot of points here about partnerships, about working with the private sector and working with LISD and other education providers to look at this broader approach to economic vitality. Big Move 6 is also a combination of two previous big moves, the identity focal points and the communications and marketing. And so we're really here looking at Louisville's unique character, creating and enhancing that and sharing that with people, whether they live in Louisville, they're visiting, they're just arriving or driving through, that they understand that this is a unique place. And so we've also added a number of different things here that look at not only the big gateways like the Northern Gateway, where your zoning case is located that you just did, but also distinctive places within individual neighborhoods. You see the objectives at the bottom of the screen here for all of the identity, place, and communications. The map shows identity focal points as well as gateways. There are more of these than in the last plan, and we've done that intentionally based on feedback from everybody. I'm going to go through quickly the recommendations of action priorities because there are specific action priorities for each one of these geographic areas. The first set of action priorities relate to all of the gateways and identity focal points, and you can see that they're focused on engaging people, on using design, public art, open spaces, lighting, all of those kinds of things to create and reinforce the sense of place in each of these areas. I will tell you that that's the item of action priorities out of our online survey, got the highest percentage of people saying that was really important to achieve over the next 5 years. So there was a lot of resonance for that idea as well. The Southern Gateway is one that was included before, and so it continues collaboration with Music City Mall and looking at that development at the DCTA Hebron Station. The Northern Gateway, you were just discussing, coordinating and implementing mixed-use urban villages and transit-oriented development on the west side, as well as a waterfront resort type of development on the east side of I-35. The Eastern Gateway is a new gateway, was not included previously, but we feel like it's important that there be a gateway as you're coming into Castle Hills, which will in turn be the entrance into Louisville. As well, the Southwestern Gateway is a new recommendation for this plan, and that comes out of the Southwest Louisville Small Area Plan that implemented the 2025 and looking at creating a distinctive gateway for people arriving into Louisville from DFW Airport. There are 3 identity focal points, the difference being these are not gateways into the city, these are locations within the community, but nevertheless, they're major points that should have a strong and clear identity. The central I-35 focal point is one of those that's called out in the I-35 overlay planning and that overlay district, as is Main Street subdistrict, and the focus there being on working to take advantage of Medical City Louisville, and look at ways to leverage that to see further economic development at that interchange. The Crown Center identity focal point is one that will be a focal point for Castle Hills as well as for Louisville. I mentioned earlier that we are thinking about different scales of these places. So the item here on distinctive places looks at destinations that would be within neighborhoods, within commercial areas, within different parts of the city, and that those would have wayfinding to connect them and help people get from place to place. And if they're in one location, they know there are some other cool places that they could go and visit, and they could find out how to get there. That last bullet as well came out of the council retreat, and the discussion that there isn't really a particular western gateway into Louisville. And discussion with staff after that council retreat, we realized that the major roadways coming in from the west are all largely developed. So whichever area, one or more of those, that might be a good gateway or a place to communicate that you're entering Louisville, it's going to be a different sort of gateway than the ones that we've just been talking about and focused on. So rather than just picking one of those, the action item here is to look at all of those areas and figure out the best way to create a gateway so that whatever direction you're entering Louisville, you know that you're in a unique community. The last set of action priorities for this big move deal with communications, and they have a lot of emphasis, as you can see, on the brand and identity, but also on things about the city's heritage and its public art initiatives, and inclusive engagement with all parts of the community. The last of the big moves is sustainability, and the goal here remains as it was, create a community that embraces sustainability. We've changed this big move in order to make it sync up with the Sustainability Action Plan, which is being developed and I think will be coming forward very soon. The objectives really are still the same, looking at sustainability in the Louisville community, as well as sustainability on the part of the city of Louisville for itself, for its own operations, and also to be a role model for the broader community. Each of the action priorities that you see here relate to one of the major categories that will be in that Sustainability Action Plan. So it's completely coordinated between those two documents, and that document then has more specific tasks and timelines included. As I mentioned earlier, the strategic moves are new for this version of the document. As you know, this is reflecting some of the things that had been in the council's priorities previously. The first of those three is a values-driven organization, and looking at operating the city of Louisville as a values-driven organization, including the images that you see here of the Louisville Way, that set of values that's been adopted for the community. You can see here the objectives related to the Louisville Way and having a city workforce that reflects the diversity of the community. Again, there are a number of action priorities included here. Many of these have developed out of the Listen, Learn, Lead discussions from last summer. The second strategic move is data-driven organization. And again, I think everybody understands the importance of using information and facts to base decisions and base investments and base the services that the city is delivering to its residents. And so this is really focused on that and making sure that the city takes advantage of any technology and economic changes that will help it to be even more efficient in the future. Here's the set of action priorities. Again, a number of these relate to some of the changes in technology and some of the changes in experiences of services over the last year during the time when we've been doing things remotely and dealing with the pandemic. The last strategic move is Connected City, and this is looking at a lot of different kinds of connections, multimodal connections, but also information and technology kinds of connections as well. And lastly, inclusiveness and that kind of connection with the community. So there are a number of action priorities here related to each one of those different areas. They build on some of the work y'all have done recently. Again, the 10-minute walk to a park, work that has been happening with DCTA to improve its service and coordinate that engagement to serve Louisville residents, and also some of the complete streets and those aspects that y'all have been working on in the time since the 2025 plan was first adopted. So those are the sections of the document and some of the highlights on the action priorities and objectives. This is the schedule that we have laid out at this point. We're obviously presenting this evening to you. We will be presenting and having a discussion on Thursday with the Louisville 2025 committee. Next Wednesday, the Parks Board will be considering the document, and then we hope to present for council consideration on April 19th. The library board will be receiving a presentation as well on the 21st, and I think that will be along with their strategic plan. So with that, let me just close with the next steps that this plan lays out through the year 2025. There are several specific things that will take this vision and make it into a more detailed kind of reality. It's intended to keep building on that inclusive outreach, engage Castle Hills residents even more as the annexation takes place. Each of the departments is going to be working on a business plan of how their department is going to be achieving its part of this 2025 update plan. We look that will make Louisville more resilient and adaptable. And obviously we started this whole process saying, what does Louisville want to be when it turns 100 in 2025? So there's going to have to be some effort to come up with a really fun and cool celebration in that year. At 2025, we expect to build on this plan by creating a plan that looks further ahead. Things change so rapidly these days that about every 5 years, you really need to revisit this. And I think all of us have been surprised at how many things are really different now than when we did the original plan and when it was adopted in 2014. So the city has built in the idea of a touch point process every 5 years to make sure that the plan stays relevant, stays engaged with the community, and continues to really do the best thing it can for Louisville. So with that, I hope that I have covered those at least in some detail. I'm happy to answer any questions or entertain any other kinds of discussion, and we can certainly go back to look at any of the details as you would like to. Are there questions or discussions from the commission?
Fortunately, I think most of us are very familiar with this. So,
yeah, there's a lot of this will look very familiar from the discussion we had in December. There have been, as I say, some refinements, and I hope that you're pleased with the layout and the look and the details of the discussion now that you have a complete document in your hands rather than just the bullet points on a PowerPoint.
It looks good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Well, as I understand, this is a public hearing. Mm-hmm. So I assume that we need to open this up for hearing from citizens if they have logged in or called in. Is that right, Michelle?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
We don't have any more meeting attendees currently.
Okay, so since there is no one there to come forward for the public hearing, I will go ahead then and close it. Now, is our motion that we're going to just have out here is for our recommendation to council and for approval? Okay, so that being the case, I would entertain a motion, please.
I move to approve the council.
Motion by Aram. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by William. We'll do a roll call vote here. William?
Aye.
I vote aye. Alvin?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Aram?
Aye.
And our motion passes.
This item
Yeah.
will go before the city council for a second public hearing and a final decision on April 19th, 2021 at 6:00 p.m.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, great job.
So our next item for consideration then is our other business tonight. We have a presentation by city staff regarding the proposed city charter amendments on the May 1st, 2021 ballot.
Yes, and we have this evening our Assistant City Manager, Claire Powell, here to give that presentation.
Hello, Commissioners. I have not actually presented to P&Z before. I know many of you. In fact, I think Karen Locke was on this board. I think the Charter Review Commission. Were you not? I think she was, yeah. So she can help me present this as well. So really the point of today, there's no action to be taken. It's just education to let you know about our 2021 charter election. I will share my screen and we can get started. Let me get to presentation mode. I have to move my little bar here. Well, hold on one second. There we go. And it's doing it again. Hold on one second. Okay, there we go. All right, so on May 1st, the City Council has called a charter amendment election. So voters can decide on 4 propositions. So the voters are going to be deciding yes or no on each of the propositions, and we're going to go through each one of those. And I'm sure all of you are aware that also on the May 1st ballot, it's going to include a vote for mayor as well as 2 city council positions. So just for background purposes, our charter was adopted in 1963. And the importance of a charter is without a charter, you're not a home rule city. So you have to have an election to become a home rule city. And if you're not a home rule city, you're a general law city. And what that means is that you have to look to the state to get your authorization to do things. Whereas the moment you become a home rule city, and as we did in 1963, the state provided a provision that says you can create your own charter, and that sets all of your authorities out. And then the only thing that limits that authority is when you look to the statutes that conflict with your charter. So having a charter is really important for local control, and we've been using it successfully since 1963. So the first proposition is Proposition A, and that's really dealing with how many council members that we will have after annexation. So I'm going to read the propositions and I'll just summarize the rest of them. And at the end of each proposition discussion, I'll open it up for any questions that anyone has. That way we can get through it pretty quickly. So the proposition A is, should the charter be amended to provide that if prior to January 1st, 2023, the city makes an annexation that increases the geographic size of the city by at least 8%, the size of the city council will be increased from a mayor and 5 council members to a mayor and 6 council members, and the number required to constitute a quorum and to transact business will be increased to reflect that addition of 1 council member. So it's in a question because voters are going to say yes or no. So details about this is that basically we would be moving under this proposition from the current, sorry, I thought I got some feedback there. So currently we have the 5 council members and the mayor, and we've had that since 1925. So think about the population in Louisville in 1925. Each council member over the years has gained more and more residents that they're actually representing. So with the addition of Castle Hills, remember when it has that trigger point that says if we take in a certain number of population, that's really only describing the scenario that would come under the annexation of Castle Hills. So if we were to annex before 2023, then it would trigger an additional seat on council. The mayor would still be vote to break the ties. So the mayor doesn't, and right now that's exactly what happens. And that, I think we already talked about that, but it would change how many people it would be required to have a quorum. So that would go from 3 to 4. So the current population is about 105,000, and after annexation, we're expecting it to be about 120,000. So the ratio of council members to residents would remain similar if we go 5 to 6. The 6 city council seats would then be assigned to residential districts, but that's not on the ballot today or this next month. That was already decided in 2017 that upon annexation of Castle Hills, we would go to residential districts. Just to remember what residential districts means is that right now, we don't have residential districts. So that means you could have every single council member living in Old Town, let's say. They could all run from Old Town and all be elected and live in Old Town. This basically says the council members are going to have to live in discrete districts. That does not mean that they are voted only by those people in the district. So like, for example, City of Dallas doesn't just have residential districts. They have districts where the only people that vote for, someone in District 11 are the people who live in District 11. The council was very clear, as well as the Charter Review Commission years past in 2017, that they were not interested in that, mainly because they wanted to make sure that each council member was beholden to every member of the community, so that you didn't have one council member that was trying to get pet projects for one area of town, that they represented everyone. But what this does mean is that the council members have to live in certain areas. Now, I can't tell you what those areas are because we have to wait for after the results from this census that just recently got done. And then we would be able to, and upon annexation, we would have to run all those numbers. And then we would hire a consultant to come and draw maps for us. And there are also legal requirements that prevent you from gerrymandering and doing things like that, making sure that you're not splitting districts to where, if you have a high density minority area, you don't want to split that area so that you dilute the votes, right? So all of those things still are in place, and that would happen upon the residential districts being drawn. We just don't know what those are right now. But again, that was something that was done in 2017. What this is saying is there would add another council seat. So this goes again about the 8% growth. So it's really a trigger. So even though this might get elected to be part of our charter, as well as the residential districts, there's a trigger point that if this does not happen, it will never go into effect. We are currently planning to annex Castle Hills in December 2021. And so we gave ourselves a nice buffer there, just in case, we're working through several iterations, not iterations, but several preparations for the annexation, doing a lot of outreach with Castle Hills. So we put a lot of leeway in there for ourselves. And just to note, Castle Hills voters are not eligible to vote in the Louisville elections until May 2021. So they don't have a say in this extra seat in this upcoming election. So with that, does anyone have any question on Proposition A? Okay, I'll move on. So Proposition B says, should the charter be amended to eliminate provisions related to the budget process that are covered by or inconsistent with state law? So basically, our charter has very specific rules that were established from the very beginning about when we put out a budget, we're going to have a certain time frame. And I think it actually reflected state law at the time. But basically time frames for calling public hearings and publishing and making copies available to the public in hard form versus digital form, which is now, of course, where everything is moving. The problem is that the state law in 2019 made several changes, mainly because they wanted to curtail cities that were not being as open as Louisville has been about their budget process. So they put a lot of restrictions on timelines. There's also a lot of other, there were some The legislation also was intended to make it more difficult to pass increases in property taxes. So all of those budget timeframes and dates that they put on there don't necessarily conflict with our dates, but read together make it incredibly difficult to prepare a budget, actually near impossible. So what this is doing is basically taking out any references within our charter that conflicts with state law. It's, like I said, state law or is already covered by state law. So state law will always trump our charter because we are limited by state law, but we wanted to make sure there was the practicality of how to prepare your budget was safe. So these are the changes that we're specifically allowing state law to control. So it's basically the preparation and the submission of the budget that will fall back on state law. Notice of the public hearing on the budget, that also falls back on state law. Removing the required timing for holding the public hearing, and then the effective date of budget and certification. These are all things that just would fall back to state law. I will tell you one of the concerns from our, one of the members specifically in our Charter Review Commission committee was worried about making sure that we still kept our very transparent process with our budget. That is not really we're going to run the same type of budget process that's very open. But what it is going to do is just make sure that it's more streamlined and copies state law. Are there any questions about Proposition B? Okay. Proposition C is very interesting for y'all. So should the charter be amended to eliminate the requirement that residents of the city who serve on the City Planning Commission own real property? So currently it does require you to own real property within the city, but, and it does have residency requirements as well, but residents who don't own property can't. So the issue has come up and really recommended by the committee as well as the council is for the public to consider is this something we want to take away? Is this something, especially given our demographics in our community, that may not be as consequential as it once was? So if you think about the residents living in rental properties, this makes up more than 50% of Louisville's population of residents. I think it's up to the public if this is something that they want to eliminate. You'd still keep the residency requirements though. So this would basically be the change. It takes out the removing the words and own real property therein. Are there any questions about that?
Yes. What's the background history for this when this was added, I guess?
I think I'm betting this was original to the charter in 1969. So there probably wasn't a lot of rental properties in Louisville at the time. And honestly, I've seen this as I've seen this as a practice in other cities that are usually smaller in nature, and usually the larger cities. And I think the more you add to your housing stock that's rental, there's a movement away from that.
And why put it on planning and zoning and not city council, I guess?
I don't believe, I'm not sure if it's actually in city council. I think it's just P&Z. I don't think there's a requirement for.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Why didn't they make it part of city council and just P&Z?
So I'm speculating here, but I'm thinking planning and zoning, because it's related to its specific function is about land development, and they probably wanted people that had the belief is people have more of an ownership in your community if you actually own land in your community. I think that was but I am speculating on that.
Okay, thank you.
Claire, do you know if the cities that don't have this requirement that you own real property beyond P&Z, do they see more turnaround in terms or participation, given if you're, how do I put this without sounding, Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like,
what you're trying to say is, I think what you're trying to say is that if you're renting, are you moving more often?
Yes,
and maybe
exactly.
moving out of the community more, and so that you might have more turnover.
Yes.
I don't have that data for you. But I will say that there are several people on other boards that live in apartments or rental properties in Louisville, and they've remained on boards for many years. So that's just, I don't have the data with regard to turnover rates. And obviously, council can consider it. It takes it out of the requirement, but when council's appointing people, those are all things that go into whether or not they want to appoint you, right? So, you look at an applicant holistically. How long they've been in the community, how long they've been, especially with P&Z, you guys are kind of the preeminent board in the city. So usually you have to work your way up from many boards.
I can see it both ways. Like my own personal tenants, I usually keep like 5 to 7 years. I don't have a huge turnaround like in the rental houses that I own. So I can see it both ways. It's just interesting. Maybe I can dig into it deep myself and see if there's data on it, but
The commission talked about how a person who would even be interested in applying for the board would be someone who had already invested in the city. And there are a lot of people in rental properties that just don't want to own, and have lived here forever. So we didn't see it as a big stumbling block. And as Claire mentioned, council has the final say in appointing someone.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Any other questions, Jill, on that one? Okay. So Proposition D, should the charter be amended to clarify the role of the city manager by deleting a provision giving the city council authority to administer city departments? So I will say that this one has given the public probably the most questions we've gotten. So we've gotten questions from the public just asking for clarifications on this. So really what it is the city charter assigns a list of 22 specific powers to the city council. So if you remember, I talked about the purpose of a charter is to establish like the authority of a city. So there's 22 specific powers to city council. The charter also creates a position for the city manager to be appointed by the city council and then serves as that chief administrator and executive officer. So a chief administrator and executive officer is someone who basically does the day-to-day operations, right? And and our charter says we are a council manager form of government. So the alternative is like a strong mayor form of government, where you might see, for example, like a good example of that would be if you went to Chicago, a lot of the council members there are much more into the day-to-day operations of running a government. But with a council manager form of government, the city council sets policies and approves the budget, but the day-to-day is operated by the city manager. So there's a conflict here, and that's existed. Now, has it created any problems in the past? It has not, that we know of. But one power that's assigned to the city council includes the ability to establish, create, consolidate, or abolish administrative departments and distribute the work of divisions. And I can tell you that's the antithesis to having a council manager form of government, because council is not distributing work. They may tell Donna, our city manager, these are the priorities and these are the projects I want you to work on. And it's her job to get the right people on the job, right? So it's not necessarily, you're not going to see a council member come in and say, I want to take this one project from Claire and give it to Eric. We're the two of the ACM, well, we're to the two ACMs right now. Donna does that. So this really clarifies that. Historically, the city has left that authority to the city manager, and the reason the city manager council form of government is good is that you hire chief administrators with the expertise to be able to do that. So And there is no record that this power has ever been exercised by the city council since the charter was adopted in 1963. So if this were to fail, I don't think our practice is not going to change, especially under this relationship we have with this council and this city manager. It goes well. But it is to clean up this issue that's been in the charter for a long time. Any questions on that? Okay. All right, and this is just letting you know where you can early vote in Denton County and the times, so take note. I won't go through all that. And then if you live in Dallas County, these are the times. And then election day, where you can vote. That was the end of my presentation. Does anyone have any questions in total? Okay.
Thank you, Claire.
I appreciate y'all. Let me stop sharing. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire.
Okay. I think the next item we have to consider is our adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Karen,
Second.
second by Aram. We'll do a roll call vote. William?
Aye.
I vote aye. Alvin?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Aram?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Aye.
Good night.